It is decision time for Bonchari and Juja constituencies alongside other, wards, and we'll be following up on this. It's a beautiful morning. We've had our reporters on ground right from yesterday morning. Remember, we had a link with Joash Onsari and David Mudoka to paint a picture of what is happening down there, the election process or electioneering period, the by-elections for that matter, in this particular key constituencies. And they still are on ground to keep us up to tabs. And as they would say, I am receiving reports from Onsari, who says that it's a win for Pavel Oimeke of ODM, and celebrations and alations, as you can see right there, painting a picture of individuals who are so excited upon the win of their preferred candidate. Of course, he is being followed by Jubilee's Zebedeo Opore, who's garnered 7,279. Pavel himself has gotten 8,049 votes, and so that means we will be looping them in so that they give us more updates in regards to that. And also we have David Mudoka, who's been in Juja, camping there, also to paint a picture of what is playing out right there. It's a beautiful morning right here. Morning Cafe begins right now with me, Linda Alela. It is good that you're part and parcel of this conversation. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Alela at TV47KE. We have lots lined up for you later on. We get into the BBI discussion that is still on upon, close to a week, yes, after that landmark ruling that got the reggae proponents flat-footed. It's something that we still have a conversation revolving around that. But before we get deep into that conversation, it is only important that we loop in David Mudoka so that he can tell us what it is that is happening in Juja constituency. Mudoka, if you can hear me.
Well, Linda, a good morning to you. Welcome to Mangu High School Talent Center, which is the main talent center for the Juja constituency by-elections that began yesterday as voters took their time to go and cast the ballot until 5 p.m. and thereafter tallying began here at Mangu High School. Now, when we were going to press last night, it was all systems go as a number of polling stations submitted their results, which were verified and actually put on projected by the IEBC for the public to see. Up to 16 polling stations had submitted their results, and at that time a candidate, George Koimburi of the People's Empowerment Party, was on the lead, trailed not so closely but with a manageable gap by Jubilee's Susan Waititu. But now, between that time up to now, that particular tallying exercise has been on a standstill. Reason being, just a few minutes to midnight, we saw chaos erupt inside this particular hall as rival groups faced off. One of the groups that was led by Kiambu Governor James Nyoro, who is allied or who is backing Susan Waititu of the Jubilee Party, stormed this particular hall demanding a number of things. One, demanding the IEBC officials to stop the count over what they termed as alleged electoral malpractice that was being conducted by their rivals, that is the George Koimburi side, who is of the People's Empowerment Party, a party that is led by Gatundu South lawmaker Moses Kuria. And since that time, IEBC, through its chair Wafula Chebukati, issued a statement that will see this particular tallying exercise suspended. Until now, that has been the case. We have been here, and this room that was actually occupied by agents, observers from almost all candidates, because this was a race that attracted up to 11 candidates. They were kicked out, and actually right now we have only 3 groups of people: agents of the IEBC, officials of the IEBC, security officials, as well as us journalists. That has been the story. We have been keeping vigil here all night, braving the cold, braving the darkness just to see when the count will resume. But we do not have an official statement from the IEBC as of now. We do not know when that particular exercise will resume. We anticipate maybe late at around 7 or 8 a.m. But again, that solely lies in the hands of the IEBC officials here, who are led by the returning officer from the electoral body, Justus Mbithi. Linda.
Well, you just decided that you were about to call me Abubakar, but all the same, we're here. And actually, we've been up equally alongside the likes of Abubakar, following up on this and also expecting so much details from you. And Mudoka, we definitely expect to get more. As I have said earlier on, it's contrary to what it is that is playing out in Juja. Bonchari is a whole different affair, and they officially have the winner of the day in ODM's candidate. Will be looping in on Sari to update us and to give us, feedback from that particular end. But as you have seen earlier on, pictures of celebrations as the constituents of Bonchari are excited to get a representative who is going to take up the challenge, taking them to the next level, especially at this point when we're headed for an electioneering period that is come 2022. So that you'll be getting more details of that and pictures of the same individuals staying up just to see then what plays out in regards to the same. I mean, votes that have been characterized with some level of apathy, but it's all been a different affair as they have also decided. We'll also be giving you updates on these other wards that equally had their by-elections conducted yesterday. But before we get to deeply look into that, it's also fair that we look at what the papers have. I have the Daily Nation, the Standard newspaper, and the People Daily with me briefly, and then we'll expound on them later. We just look at the front pages. Main story, or the main story, is captured on the front page of the Daily Nation. BBI court drama, that is the biggest story, as you can see right here. 5-judge bench last week scheduled process to change constitution through BBI, and this is what will be informing the basis of our conversation this morning. It's a back and forth affair, as said here. In a day characterized by indecision, Attorney General Paul Kihara succeeds in having application in the High Court certified as urgent, and then withdraws in a few hours later and heads to the Court of Appeal as he seeks to overturn last week's ruling against the Building Bridges initiative. That is what we'll be looking at this morning. Alongside my guests, we'll be having lawmakers of Matuga and Embakasi North, that is James Gakuya and Honorable Tandaza Sawa, alongside a member of Linda Katiba in Daisy Amdani. And also we delve deep into this conversation in regards to that quash of this particular process of reggae and the chances, which many consider as slim, the slim chances of the proponents sailing through at the level of the appeal, and whether the drumbeats of reggae will sound again. Now, independence is the word. Tuju tells the judiciary. CS Court's controversy comment that judges should realize they depend on other arms of government, such as the police, STARS outage, and definitely what it is that the Constitution speaks about says that, these arms of government should work in tandem, complement each other, if at all they have to run the businesses of the country. But, well, we have seen contrary in the recent past with lots of conversations and allegations of bad blood existing between the executive and the judiciary, and also the arm twist of the legislators at the level of parliament. And therefore it appears as though in numerous occasions the executive has tried its level best to probably bulldoze on matters, of course, that are of interest to the common mwananchi. So that ruling is quite landmark, and we await to see then what direction it takes. Like we say, it's a matter in court, so we can only wait for the courts to deliberate on the same. Boni Forest operation heightened following Al-Shabaab attack. This is pretty much common, and security was being beefed up in Boni Forest, that is in Lamu, following an attack on Kenya Defense Forces by Al-Shabaab militants. The number of casualties was not immediately established, and it's a developing story. We'll be following up to make sure that my team also gets to have you, that information that is needed. A story captured on page 9 has been considered as a hotspot for terrorist activities, and we can only hope that, yes, the Ministry of Interior will come in handy to make sure that this is calmed. Fading hopes for SGR to Western Kenya. Uganda has signed a 5 billion deal with a Chinese firm that will see its 260-kilometer century-old meter gauge railway line between Malaba and Kampala rehabilitated. The story captured on page 8. How fading is it on the hopes of SGR in Western Kenya is also a conversation that is on. Remember, there's been, that agreement, a couple of agreements across these East African nations that at some point in time have been quashed. Begging the question as to just how genuine East Africans are in terms of working together and getting projects that would, benefit the region across, when you find that maybe these agreements in most cases are quashed by one state, or one state decides to go contrary to the same. We've seen Mama Samia Hassan Suluhu coming into the country and also going to Uganda and probably trying to revive that conversation or getting East African integrated, and importantly working out on projects that are of interest to the people of East Africa. COVID-19 and the Lake region headed the India way. It's pretty much unfortunate. We're told that there's a surge on the variant or the Indian variant in the country. Medical experts have warned of a possible India-like situation in Lake Victoria region. That is after COVID-19 infections surged more than 200% in 2 weeks. That's pretty much unfortunate. We need to remember that it's important we stay alert, we abide by the guidelines that have been given by the Ministry of Health. Stay woke, make sure that you are keen, because this is probably something that we do not want to experience. A story captured on page 10. We'll be looking at it as we proceed with the broadcast. Convict's daughter pleads for mercy. She recounts the strong bond that she had with her father, noting that his death and the arrest of her mother has deprived her siblings and herself of love and parental care. Story captured on page 3. Interesting piece that you definitely would want to follow up and understand. And Ruto allies reject call to impeach a president. Also a conversation that has been triggered by that, ruling, and allies of Deputy President William Ruto have rejected suggestion to bring a motion of impeachment against President Kenyatta after last week's ruling. And yes, that's a conversation we'll be having later on. And as I have said, on the Bonchari by-elections and Juja by-elections as captured on the papers, we now get a hold of Joash Onsari to keep us on the loop. Joash, good morning. Pole sana kwa kazi, and evidently a moment of celebration for ODM.
Good morning to you, Linda Lela. We are at Bonchari constituency, and it's official that the results have been announced, and Pavel Oimeke of ODM has emerged the winner. He garnered 8,049 votes, and these are the votes from all the 103 polling stations, and he is followed by Sebedeo Opore of Jubilee, who garnered 7,279 votes. Third was the UDA candidate Teresa Oro Bitutu, who is the widow to the late John Oro Oyoka, who garnered 6,964 votes. And earlier on, the returning officer of Bonchari, that is Benson Ambuko, said that this is a victory for Pavel Oimeke, and he gave a speech. He handed over the certificate to the winner, and Pavel Oimeke was accompanied by the governor of Kisii County, James Ongwae, who addressed the media and also the people who attended this particular victory. Now, I will link you with what they had to say earlier on as the celebration celebration continue in this particular constituency, and it's a big win for ODM party here in Bonchari constituency. So let's listen in to what the returning officer had to say, and also let's get the speech of Pavel Oimeke, the governor of Kisii County, James Ongwae.
Results, I want to declare the winner of this election as one Robert Pavel Obwoto Oimeke of ID number 13818674. Certificate of elected member of National Assembly. The constituency returning officer hereby declares that Robert Pavel Obwoto Oimeke of ID number 13818674 has been duly elected as the member of National Assembly for Bonchari constituency in the election held on the 18th day of May 2021. Constituency returning officer Benson Sumba Ambuko. Sign. Allow me to give you the certificate.
To take this opportunity to thank, first of all, the Almighty God for having delivered the victory. I also wish to thank my party, ODM, for the support that they have given me. And I also wish to thank our party leader, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. I also wish to thank my governor, His Excellency James Ongwae. I also wish to thank all the leaders, the Senate, the Senator, Professor Sam Ongeri, Mama County, Honorable Janet Ongera. I also wish to thank all the MCAs who participated, the Secretary General, who is here, Edwin Sifuna, and also Mheshimiwa Charles Onyancha, for having been with us through this journey, and all the MCAs who participated in ensuring this victory. It has not been easy with the huge deployment of security forces in Bonchari, but I want to trust in God that you cannot force the people of Bonchari to elect somebody they don't want. And therefore, I want to say that we should all learn that people have the democratic right to choose whoever they want. And therefore, the will of God has been done in Bonchari. And as for me, I'm ready to work to make sure that the people of Bonchari have development and have transformation so that we can make the lives of our people much better than it has been. Thank you very much, and I look forward to commencing my work. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've been advised that I need to invite His Excellency the Governor to come and say a few words.
Bonchari oye! Bonchari oye! Let me first start by giving grace to the Almighty, because this victory really is God-given. Let me also congratulate the people of Bonchari for the democracy that they have showed during this election. Let me congratulate my brother Pavel. You are a hard nut to crack. Let me congratulate my party leader, Baba. Baba, we wish him well, and we hope that he recovers quickly from the ravages of whatever diseases that we have at the moment. For the people of Bonchari, as the governor of this county, and also having watched this election, I made sure that I let the people of Bonchari.
Those are some of the sentiments they had to give out after ODM won this particular seat for Bonchari constituency. Remember, this seat fell vacant after the death of John Oro Oyoka, who passed on early February this year. And here I'm joined by the residents of Bonchari to give us their feeling. How do they take this particular by-election? So tuambie jina lako na uzungumze nasi kuhusu swala hili la uchaguzi, imekuwa vipi?
Kwa majina naitwa Elias Maganga. Mimi ni mzaliwa wa Bonchari. Tumefurahia fanya uchaguzi imefanyika kwa njia ya uhuru na haki. Mwenye ametangazwa pengine si mwenye nilikuwa natarajia, but tumekubali. Bora tu imepigwa kwa uhuru na haki. Kila mtu apata haki yake. Tumalize mambo ya siasa. Kila mtu arudi kwa kazi yake ya kawaida. Hiyo ndio kitu naweza sema. Tunashukuru sana.
Na mshukran sana. Acha nizungumze na mzee hapa. Karibia hapa uzungumze nasi, tuambie jina lako.
Asante, mimi naitwa Peter Ogero. Mimi ni mkaaji wa Bonchari. Na nimefurahia sana kwa vile kazi yetu imefanyika vile tulikuwa tunataka. Na vile tumefanya kazi yetu hatuoni shida yoyote. Watu wa Bonchari wamefanya kazi yao bila ubaguzi. Yes, wamefanya kazi nzuri sana. Kwa hivyo tulikuwa hatukuwa tunatarajia kitu chochote, tulikuwa tunataka tu usalama. Hiyo tu. Yeah.
Shukran sana. Those are some of the sentiments from this particular constituency. Residents are happy, and of course this particular seat attracted 13 candidates who vied for the position, and going forward they are optimistic that everything will be fine. They will be able to get development as they were in the previous leadership of the late John Oro Oyoka. So this, I will give it back to you, Linda, in the studio so that you can continue with that broadcast. For us, it's a wrap from Bonchari constituency. I've been with my camera person, Kelvin Fraji. My name is Joash Onsare. Back to you into the studio.
Definitely, congratulations to Pavel Oimeke of ODM party, who's won the Bonchari by-election. To note is how most of these people are satisfied with how the process was conducted there. And as you rightfully heard, equally, there are some who say that, well, the winner is probably not the person they expected, but all the same, they are thankful because of the aspect of security and, a peaceful process to them, free and fair. We can only wait to see whether the other individuals will challenge that, but all the same, congratulations to the winner. Joash says it's a wrap, but it's not a wrap just yet, because then you'll be receiving more updates from that, and as and when we get the freshest of news from there. And also that is different, or it's a different affair, as Mudoka has said, down in Juja and other by-elections that have been conducted in different wards. And so we'll be getting updates of these as and when, like I have said, they get to hit our desk. Let's now proceed with what has been captured on the papers, and then now that means we close on the Daily Nation, the front page, and we come to the Standard newspaper. What has been detailed on the front page of the Standard newspaper: surprises and upsets for big three in polls. Who are these big three that we're talking about? President Uhuru Kenyatta, Right Honorable Raila Odinga, and the Deputy of President Uhuru Kenyatta, that is Deputy President William Ruto. Early results in tightly contested by-elections in Bonchari and Juja constituencies and in Riru ward, where parties associated with top political guns Uhuru, Ruto and Raila, so some celebrated, or some celebrate and others lick their wounds. Well, it's been a whole different affair, but as many would say, you look at the by-elections and they're considered as litmus tests to what would play out in 2022, or would paint a picture of how strong these individuals are. And there you've seen what it is that is playing out. What we are waiting for is that on Juja. Earlier on, of course, we had received reports of the fact that the candidate of Moses Kuria's party was taking the lead over all the other 10 contenders, because there were 11 in total. Then again, upon that halt, as earlier mentioned, then we can only wait to see what will play out in regards to the same. That is on the by-elections. Still on the front page of the Standard newspaper, Children cry for mother guilty of murder. That is a story captured on page 10, the very same story that has been captured on the Daily Nation. Well, these were damning reports, crimes of passion. But then again, sometimes we do not take time to imagine what the ramifications, the effects of the same would be for our loved ones. And so these children are crying out to say that, in as much as mother could be guilty, it is only fair that they are allowed that love from her now that they do not have the dad. And US to give out 20 million COVID doses, a story captured on page 32. President Joe Biden declaring this and saying that this will go to cushion and or to help most of the countries that are vulnerable and say poor countries, or so to speak. And that is something that has come in as a sigh of relief for a majority of these countries that have not had a chance to access vaccine for their very own citizens. So the story captured on page 32, you can always grab a copy and understand details of the same as this, even well as IMF cuts a growth forecast. The story captured on page 29 on the business or in the business world. And in the world of sports, will Chip Tegay break Coleman's record? We are eagerly following up and waiting on this. And as always, we say we have our sports team, our able sports team, the likes of Jumar, Dennis, and Kuloba on standby to make sure that they give you updates on, of course, the Olympics and what it is that will play out. Why it's a dog's life for city commuters. Finding one's way into that is and out of Nairobi CBD is not for the faint-hearted. That one you would agree to. It takes planning, negotiations, skills, ingenuity, guile, effort, money, and a dose of good luck to get to and out of work or school at a time. Well, this is a story captured on page 6, 7, and 8. It's more of a feature story. You can grab a copy and get to understand where why there is this argument in regards to the same. Wage bills cripple county development. That is one thing that is a huge of a problem. Probably one that has been, used to hit hard the conversation on matters BBI. This is the story here. It's not so clear on my screen, but all the same, I'll keep you up to speed. 4 counties in Western region, some which inherited workers from the defunct local authorities, are struggling with high wage bills that have hampered their capacity to carry out development projects so as to pay staff salaries. A story captured on page 21. Well, as you heard the MCA speaking of this scenario yesterday, they said the exchequer has not, received anything for the past 3 months in terms of, pushing for devolution, leaving many asking themselves just how best, this aspect of devolution can be seen to be successful when monies are not trickling down to the grassroots. But the biggest question then would be, at what point do these counties get to levels where they will, one, be able to generate their own revenue that will be enough to sustain the counties? And even if it doesn't get to that point, then how can they trust the BBI process, which proposes about 35% to go to the counties? How can they trust that is possible? Yet it's been a struggle to even get what it is that is there today. So we'll be looking at all that as we proceed. And on the aspect of other stories on opinions, judiciary has asserted itself as a custodian of justice. Unlike members of parliament, it has refused to become an appendage of the executive. We'll be looking at that. Remember, we are discussing BBI and the ramifications of the same alongside Member of Parliament of Embakasi North, James Gakuya, Member of Parliament of Matuga, that is Honorable Kasim Sawa, who's on standby joining us virtually, and also we'll be having a member of Linda Katiba, that is Daisy Dani. So that is Linda Katiba Initiative. We know very well that they've looked, many have looked at them as though they are the face of the no campaigns, that is in regards to matters matters BBI. We can only wait to see what she has to say about this particular ruling. I know the reactions are still on. We have them on standby, as you can see on screen, and I think it will be my pleasure to get to introduce them. We still have the People Daily also that we'll be looking at even as we proceed with the broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, good to have you this morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Linda.
Good morning.
I don't know whether they can hear me, but I can't hear them. Mheshimiwa, jambo.
Jambo sana.
Uko salama?
Niko salama.
Pole sana, last week we didn't have you here, but we are happy. I'm telling you sometimes. That's true. It is allowed, but we are glad you're well. Karibu sana. Karibu sana. So can we hear you, Mheshimiwa, from Matuga?
Yes, I
can hear you. Good. You well?
Yeah.
Karibu sana.
Very well.
Daisy, it's the first time that we're having you here. It's a pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Karibu sana. Linda is my name. And we get to the conversation of the day, but we do not delve deep into the aspect of BBI just yet, because then we have the papers, and as I always say, there are other stories also that are of great importance, and therefore it is important that we weigh in on this in the interest of making the country better for us. And just looking around, well, we have had the by-elections. It's a different affair in Juja. I know Juja would be of interest to you. Wakape, a good friend, and the individuals that registered their interest, about 11, are key, as they would have said, is that this was looked at as a race of two. That is Wakape's widow, Jubilee candidate, and that's of course the candidate who was standing under the ticket of Moses Kuria's party. He must be very excited. It appeared as though he's taking the lead, but then this process has been halted because of some indifferences that played out. What do you make of the by-elections? And officially we have an ODM party candidate in Pavel Oimeke taking the lead or winning these by-elections in Bonchari.
Oh, thank you, Rida. First and foremost, let me salute the viewers wherever they are watching us from, and coming to the matters to do with the by-election. Read this time loud, I am more satisfied with the process than the last concluded one at Matungu and the other areas. But what we have learned is that the turnout was not so good. Taking consideration that Juja had the registered number of over and above 100,000 number of voters. But taking consideration those who turned up for by-election yesterday, it's like almost a third of the number of voters. So I would record that, in fact, probably the cause is that these by-elections are being held during a working day, where most of those other people that are on the other sector are busy in their works, and only those who are flexible within the localities participated in these particular exercises. So I would wish that probably in the future the Electoral Commission will be considering to take by-elections to either Saturday, because Saturday is a more flexible day to most of the people, even those who normally works in government. They can be flexible, because take into consideration that we are in a very tricky moment where even curfew is an issue. Then it tells you that, in fact, not many people will be able to skip from job before time to find time to go and vote. But overall, I would say yesterday, I would give it 80%, the process in terms of proper preparations. It's only those few areas of Juja, and this one, Reader, is purely what I can say impunity, because somebody of a big magnitude, like a governor of Kiambu, Nyoro, I cannot expect such a magnitude man to bring chaos and stop such an exercise. Because for sure, I don't know what interest he's putting on the table. This is an exercise which has an independent agency, and Nyoro should understand that people's will has been casted, and Juja has decided whether he may not be part of the outcome, because maybe the outcome is against him or not. It is not his duty to force his way if the people's will has already casted.
A game of interest.
It is very important to respect the will of people all over. And I'm happy that it's only that orchestration. The rest of the exercise Bonchari was cool, campaigns were cool, and even what I can say, voting yesterday was very cool. Even in Junja, all through the day, it was cool, and therefore voting process was very okay. It's only that people at the end of the day wanted to overturn the results and the will of the people, which we cannot allow. And at this particular moment, I would say, leader, it is very true that in fact what we need to do as a nation, and this is where we normally find issues of teething issues after every election result, and especially during our general election.
All right.
It is because surely there is elements of lack of proper arrangements, and therefore what we call peaceful, fair and free election results doesn't appear. But wherever we achieve that, we will be out of these ugly situations after election.
On that very note, Daisy, one would want, or we would be tempted to want to rate the performance of IEBC having handled all these other by-elections, the previous ones. I mean, a couple of by-elections handled in the country this year. And generally looking at the fact that, well, it's a game of interest, and therefore one would probably want to understand why Nyoro would want to come and play this politics that he played. Looking at what has been captured on the front page of, say, the Standard newspaper, they speak of surprises and upsets for big three in polls, and therefore the by-elections have, I don't know whether been reduced or equated to the faces of these three individuals. That is President Uhuru Kenyatta, that is Jubilee, Deputy President William Ruto, UDA, and Right Honorable Raila Odinga, ODM. Daisy.
I can tell
Let's allow Daisy to come in first.
Okay.
Mushimiwa.
Okay.
Thank you, Linda, and good morning once again.
Good morning.
You know, for me, one of the biggest disappointments that I have with the IBC is their inability to enforce the rules of elections or to mete out penalties on people who violate the Electoral Code of Conduct. For instance, why would the governor of the county be allowed to come and disrupt the counting? That is actually interfering with the electoral process, and it is an electoral offense. And if you look at all the by-elections that we've had, we've seen a lot of open bribery. I mean, the media even captures people dishing out money. Nobody is penalized. We see leaders and police engaging in violent confrontations. Nobody is arrested. Nobody is charged. You remember in the last by-election in Western, we actually watched as an IBC official was hounded and frog-marched by people who are participating in the electoral process. So our elections are very chaotic scenes, and not just the elections. I mean, it starts from the nomination processes, and part of it is the political parties themselves are so prone to malfeasance. We have such unsanitary political parties. They don't follow their own rules, as set by them. Yeah. They don't follow the Electoral Code of Conduct. They don't follow the election rules. And so it becomes just a contest, a violent contest. The person who has more muscle is the one who carries the day. Nobody gets penalized. So we entrench impunity. But what it shows is that the IBC, first of all, remember that the I in IBC stands for independent, meaning that as the commission, they are supposed to be free from any partisan interests. They are supposed to be a neutral arbiter, like a referee, ensuring that the process follows the law. They are not able to do that because for whatever reason, they seem to be interfered with by, people who have clout of the state.
Right.
So, and as Mheshimiwa has said, and I think this is really important, for as long as we cannot have electoral processes that are free from interference, we will never overcome the challenge of electoral violence. And it doesn't help to only change the commissioners, because one of the hallmarks of Kenya's electoral process, every time we're coming up for a general election, we're always changing commissioners. But we don't change the attitude of the players. The politicians are the biggest culprits. And worse is when we see politicians that are allied to the state, or when we see security agencies favoring certain candidates and then using the resources and might of the state to enforce the will of whoever it is behind, those moves. That is actually what is problematic. And from all the by-elections that we've seen, I'm telling you, things do not bode well. We cannot be having these kinds of scenes coming out of by-elections when we are 15 months to a general election, and we know elections have taken this country severally to the brink of disaster.
All right, Daisy, from you, we loop in Mheshimiwa from Matuga. And Honorable Kasim, our biggest worry, our biggest question then would be, why is it that we are always focused much on pegging these conversations of by-elections and equating them to individuals, equating them to certain parties? And as much as we all understand that, it's a competitive process and it's always competition, pitting these particular political parties, do we in most cases miss out on the point? And does this then affect the performance of these individuals even when they get to the National Assembly? Because yesterday I had a conversation with individuals who really are kind of disappointed on the operations of members of parliament, because then again they appear as though they would not speak on behalf of the people but on behalf of their masters, their kingpins, their party leaders.
Thank you, Linda. I think there are several issues that you've actually touched on. But when it comes to members of parliament in the National Assembly, one, they represent their people. That is why they're there, for us elected members. So essentially, you will be debating or putting issues based on the needs or the aspirations of your people. But overall, we're also national leaders. We are in a National Assembly. So we should be debating national matters. When it comes to that point, it is my considered opinion, it is my wish that all members of parliament then will be discussing at the national platform what is good for the country, not really what is good for the party. But remember also, parties have manifestos, and the manifestos generally of all parties, I would say, are good. They talk of reviving the economy, agriculture, manufacturing, employment, all those good things they talk about. So essentially, will not be deviating too much from whichever party you come from. But again, you realize that there are people who are in the national parliament courtesy of their parties. If it were not for that person being in that party, then he or she knows very well she will not be in that august house. Then for that matter, they could appear gagged because they cannot speak their mind. But to me, that is a very unfortunate scenario. The ideal situation will be, as a representative of your people, you articulate the issues of your people, articulate national matters. When it comes to these by-elections, I participated myself in a by-election in 2010. There was a by-election in Matuga, and I'm quite privy to what goes on in a by-election. It is totally different from a general election, because all the focus now is only on that particular area. In fact, it does not automatically translate that whoever wins a by-election in the coming general election is going to win. It doesn't come out that way because the scenario is totally different. The low voter turnout, I can tell well, it was on a working day, but remember, in a general election, you have the MCA who mobilizes his or her people.
Yeah.
Of course, the member of the National Assembly, the president also has his campaign team, the governors. That is how those numbers actually come up. It's not just because of the working day. But for these, the issue of violence, which I think I have to add my voice, it is very unfortunate. The issue of the state, if it intends to interfere in the election, is something that I'll never condone. Let the people decide on the best leader that they want. Let the people move about, cast their vote, let it be counted. It was so unfortunate yesterday as we were reading, as the election was going on, that there was attempted stuffing of ballot. Those are things that should be history. Why should you stuff ballot papers for a leader of a particular area? Let the will of the people. And I'm glad on this note, up to where we've reached, that the Kenyan voter is actually now becoming a little bit independent. Most of the things that people assume that because you're in a particular party, then you automatically win, or you are having some favors from somewhere, so you the outright win. I think the Kenyan voter now is coming out of that, which is very good. Because for me, I really articulate for the people themselves getting the leader that they deserve, irrespective of which political party that person comes from. And if we transcend this to the general election, and therefore for the presidency now, which we'll be voting for, I wish Kenyans also will translate that one too. Not voting a leader because of the tribe or because of the party, or because I've said, basically all parties have the same manifesto. Can we go for a leader who we think will take us from where we are to the next level? A leader who is sober, a leader who at least convinces us that this is a person who is really, really ready to lead this country to the greater heights, not based on these other issues which actually bring us down.
All right, and we still are getting updates from there, and we'll be here to make sure that you are on the loop. Briefly, let's make this as brief as possible as we look at other stories before we get into the BBI drama that is in court right
breaking
now.
News.
Sorry, breaking news. Oh, yes. That one we've already said. ODM has won the Bonchari seat. That one is automatic. We have our very own Onsari on ground. He's giving us the updates. There's so much celebrations. I mean, this was expected because he had taken an early lead. And like you rightfully put it, the process wasn't as tough as it is in Juja, which is still not clear as at now. But we have our reporters on ground to keep us on the loop. Mheshimiwa, on matters COVID-19, we are being worried, or we are being told that we should worry, especially people from the Lake region, that they are headed the India way if they're not cautious. And even as we're headed the India way, the biggest fear right now is on the aspect of getting the vaccines, especially for the ones who are awaiting the second jab. Well, we are staring at a likely delay in commencement of round 2 of the vaccination program. That is, of course, characterized by the fact that, we've known that this was coming from India. We've not been able to get a hold of that. But what is more interesting is that the Ministry of Health declares that there are likelihoods we're going to get unused 1.3 million jabs from Congo. What do you make of that?
The first thing that comes is that how and why do we rush to get materials or equipment or such kind of vaccines that are almost to expire? Why do we move to consignment of materials that other countries considers about to expire? Why do we rush for them? Why can't we go for those vaccines that can take time with us? Why I am not seeing any single good idea rushing to secure commodities that are already procured by other East African countries, but we are rushing because those countries are sending indication that they may send back the consignment because of near to expire period. Why do we rush to that? I believe the best thing we should do, even though there is what we call a deficit between those who are vaccinated the first vaccine and now the second dose. That vacuum is, to me, is a considerable vacuum. But it does not mean that we must seal the vacuum with almost expiring consignment. And that, in this particular case, one should tell this country before he brings in those kind of materials, where is the expiring date? Because you cannot tell us Congo is about to send back because of the material about to expire. And that's what we're intending to procure to our country. Are we a second-hand material that at least those materials about to expire are not important into Congo, but here they can land here and get their way? Do you want to tell us that people are completely vaccinated everywhere in Congo, and that in fact these are excess? No, the answer is no. The answer is the material is about to expire. Then why do we rush to procure such a material that's about to expire? Or maybe the process something is wrong somewhere. And unless we have been taken through and been assured what is the expiring date, so that as the material comes, you are sure that the material is still usable and have a time to reuse.
To reuse. And it's interesting. I mean, this, of course, will definitely throw more fears to the individuals who were lucky enough to get the first jab. Well, President Uhuru Kenyatta, addressing a summit on financing of African economies hosted by President Emmanuel Macron, that is virtually, proposes a scenario where Africa can find ways or they can get more ways of financing Africa, especially on the aspect of COVID-19 recovery. I mean, looking at all this that is happening and revolving around the conversation on matters COVID-19 and how we've dealt with it and how we continue to deal with it, and the fact that, yes, we know that it's a global pandemic and therefore everyone is trying to figure out how to stay afloat. Don't you think that Kenyans really are a worried lot? I don't know whether you were lucky enough to have gotten the jab, Daisy, and what does it make you feel to even imagine that the chances of getting the next dose are 50-50?
Well, I'm not of the age bracket that was being targeted for the vaccine. However, I think if there's one thing that the government has done very poorly is the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I really want to support what Honorable Gakuya is talking about. I mean, Kenya has some of the best scientists in the world in Kemri. Why Kenya did not seek to get ahead of this pandemic when it was far out there? Because remember, we had almost a year, as we were watching it ravage Europe and the Americas. Africa, and specifically Kenya, should have been in the front line of beginning to work together with scientists abroad, just the same way that Senegal did. And I do believe we have some scientists who are working with scientists from Oxford to come up with a vaccine. What happened? What happened that Kenya was not able to get those vaccines? Because I think that there could have been joint programs that would have ensured that Kenya, even for the region and for Africa, would have been in the front line. But no, we have not been. Mm-hmm. And so now the country is scrambling. We've seen the mismanagement of COVID funds, actually the stealing of COVID funds. Mm-hmm. And I also want to put our two honorable members of parliament on the spot. Right. Because as Honorable Kasim said, rightfully, that the people who sit in parliament, the members of parliament, are there to represent the people. In the midst of a pandemic, why Parliament has not come together, called special sittings to actually come up with a master plan on behalf of the people they are supposed to be representing, to have a clear work plan of how the government is going to ensure the health of Kenyans, whether it is by vaccination, prevention, and all that. We have the team working together with the Cabinet Secretary of Health, but Parliament seems so far removed from this whole entire arrangement. They get to hear things the same way that we get to hear them as citizens, which ought not to be the case. This is a global pandemic. It is devastating, not just the health and livelihoods of Kenyans, it is devastating our economy, which was already battered by the mismanagement, So for me, our leadership on this account has failed. And just to add, the government is thinking of getting nearly expired drugs. Others, and I think there was also another country in Europe that was offering to send nearly expired drugs to Africa for use. Now, one of the things you remember when they were talking about the vaccines was also how to store them. The story of the vaccines is also very important, right? So we don't know how other countries have been handling their storage. So, you could end up with a consignment that is actually completely useless or would do further harm to your people. So I think on this one, our leaders, our entire leadership, starting with Parliament, who are supposed to be the ones putting the executive on the spot around this COVID pandemic, I think that on this one, they need to step up and begin to call the government and specifically the Ministry of Health to action and to give us a clear master plan. They've been busy running around just doing politics that is of no use to anybody, while the country, people are basically on their own. Our members of Parliament really needs to step up to the plate.
And I will question the members of Parliament when we get to the conversation of the BBI, because the feel of many is that in a way they have, first of all, this judgment by the High Court bench, that the 5 bench, has appeared as though it's an indictment to, these faces of the people, the Parliament itself, the executive, in terms of constitutionalism. Before we get to that, briefly allow me to loop you, Mheshimiwa, and probably give us your view briefly on the aspect of COVID-19, but most importantly, on the attacks or the Operation Heightened activities following the Al-Shabaab attack somewhere in Lamu Boni Forest.
Thank you, Linda. Let me just 1 minute on what Daniel just said. I take exception to her statement that you've been doing useless politics. Surely, I take that exception. We've been doing our best as parliamentarians. We're doing our best in terms of the COVID pandemic. Remember, we had the sittings, we allocated some funds to fight this pandemic. But as legislators, we can only legislate. Okay, we can only legislate, come with the budgetary allocations, which we've done. No, the executive is not complaining about any hindrances from Parliament, but it's up to the executive now to execute. Otherwise, on the issue of the attacks, the Al-Shabaab and whatever, this has been a security problem. We've been having it for some time now. And that is also another arm of the government. I believe we could be doing their best compared to what it used to be. I don't think Al-Shabaab has been planning less to attack us, but I believe it is the effort of our security agencies that has reduced up to where we are, but of course it's still happening. We can only appeal to the different agencies, the investigation agencies, the KDF, and of course the police on the ground, to really work hand in hand with the local people, because I know sometimes, especially in that area of Lamu, there's a disconnect in situations where people are arrested arbitrarily, the locals, and therefore they refrain from giving useful information, because the moment you give information, you assume that you are one of them. So this is an area that I think the security agencies can improve on. They are working relationship with the local people in these areas where Al-Shabaab is really ravaging these places. We have this problem far away from Lamu, even in my constituency in Matuga, in Kwale County, where people are assumed to be Al-Shabaab. They're taken, they're not taken to court, they disappear. These summary executions, it's very sad. I don't think in this era, somebody, even when one is alleged to be an Al-Shabaab, I think it should be taken through the normal process of law, not just being taken and disappearing the way my people, because these are people, the Kenyans disappearing in Kwale and in Coast in general. So these, I think, are some of the loose ends, which if the security agencies can tap and start cooperating with the locals, they can actually go a long way in fighting this menace of Al-Shabaab.
The other key stories captured on the papers, a conglomeration of what we'll be discussing this morning. Well, on the aspect of Boni Forest, a developing story that we'll be following up on to keep you up to tabs. Importantly, also, what we have our reporters following up on, that is on the by-elections, the key that are on the radar, that is the Bonchari by-elections and the Juja constituency by-elections. Of course, in regards to all these by-elections, we have seen the IEBC boss, that is Wafula Chebukati, now headed to headed to Juja. He's actually in Juja constituency, and he's followed up on the proceedings down there. Remember, IEBC at some point halted the counting process, and up until now it is halted courtesy of allegations of rigging. We saw the Kiambu boss also, that is the governor of Kiambu, James Nyoro, also storming in with allegations of rigging of the process that, characterized some bit of chaos and also triggered that halting of the counting process. As you can see, that is earlier on, some minutes ago, where Wafula Chebukati had gone to Juja to probably just review on this particular process. Also, there are the likes of Senator Kangata, that is Honorable Moses Kuria, as they get to follow up closely on these processes, equally crying foul and, anticipating that win that would be considered as a UDA win, because then the candidate who was taking the lead by the time this counting process was halted is a candidate that, took up or got into the race courtesy of Moses Kuria's party, and therefore will be following up to get to know what then plays out. But in regards to the general aspect or the view of the by-elections, Right Honorable Raila Odinga in his statement says that what we have witnessed in the by-elections in Bonchari and Juja is an abuse of police powers, an arrogant display of impunity by a few overzealous and bellicose government functionaries. An election process is an opportunity for the voters to express their will at the ballot and not an avenue to pursue imaginary and short-legged political interests. Security forces exist to serve the people and not the interest of those out to conduct political experiments. The peaceful coexistence post-2018 must not be taken for granted by some rogue elements wanting to confuse the handshake for an excuse to erode our hard-earned liberties. This must stop. In 30 seconds, Daisy, are these allegations, or genuinely we've seen the security forces taking this out of hand?
Yes, I think that it is worrisome. It is worrisome when we see the security agencies used to enforce the will of a political party. Mm-hmm. Remember, the police service and the security agencies are supposed to be Republican. Republican in that they are there for the people, to keep the peace and ensure that the will of the people emerges from the electoral contest. Mm-hmm. Now, when we see them openly being used to frustrate one or the other side of the political contest, that becomes an avenue for us to that becomes an avenue for people to express their disaffection in ways that we have seen previously have not sent Kenya to a good place. So I think that Kenya needs to have a very serious conversation, especially given that we have a general election coming up in the next 15 months. We need to get serious about our electoral process, mm-hmm. because if elections cease to be the means by which the will of the people, the sovereign will of the people is expressed, then the people should not be forced to engage in contests that are manipulated using violence and state overreach to bring out the will of a few individuals, or to enforce the will of a few individuals contrary to what the people want.
Mm-hmm. All right, Honorable Gakuya, do we sometimes leave the police with no option but to, take a forceful approach in taming situations?
Very clear, Linda. What we need to understand is the manner of what kind of system we are operating with. And it's very clear that, in fact, a police officer is very friendly to human being. Mm-hmm. And actually, the only problem comes is that a police officer operates under command. And once he's instructed to go a certain direction, that officer will face sack if he's not going to take that kind of command. Mm-hmm. And therefore, sometimes we blame them, but actually also that's why I have seen Tuju talking of interdependence, mm-hmm. and considering that our judiciary should behave like police, mm-hmm. Which is not really workable at all. Because you can't tell me that because the judge want to make a judgment, and this judgment will hate or will harsh the system, then he will require a police officer to escort him home. That what else that actually that judge should do otherwise and make a judgment that is not correct, so that he saves his life. That is not the way. We are not. I am telling you, we are not in Somalia. Kenya is a democracy.
Is just trying to say that, you know, constitutionally, the arms of government are supposed to complement each other, and therefore, this is not what we've seen. And at what point do they meet to a point where you'd say they are working in tandem, they are working together towards progress for the country?
Can I tell you where the police are supposed to work interdependently? It is like the matter that was for by-election yesterday. Because police should at least make sure that all areas are peaceful. Because they have been there not to incite anybody, not to fight anybody, but to make sure that the process is peaceful. That is the aim. And therefore, they cannot be seen putting any other face, because their presence there is not to intimidate anybody, but to make sure that the process is secure and safe. But you see what they do? They start doing what we call shooting on the air, like yesterday. That's what they did at KU. Then you ask yourself, were there robbers there? Was there kills there? What is the aim of shooting? Then you find that these guys are just operating under certain command or under certain directive. And therefore here who I will blame are the big fish who are the heads of that particular department. And in that particular case, I will blame the CS first. Because the CS must make sure that his brigades are within the law and are working very independently to serve the people, because their duty is only to serve the people and nothing else. But bringing an issue where you want to use the police to overturn the will of the people, we cannot allow. This can be done in those dark days, but not current. How do we move back to the dark days of Moi? It's not possible.
Okay, well, Honorable Kasim, do you want to say something about that now as we get to the conversation on matters BBI?
Very well, but mine will be very brief. For sure, it is sad that the state or the security agencies can take the role of the common mwananchi when it comes to electing that representative. It is very sad. It is regrettable. And I believe the Kenyan person, not the leaders here, because the leaders normally are partisan. You realize what is happening in Juja is not actually about the candidates. It's about the outside forces, those who want to prove a point that I'm the supremo here. That is the problem. But when now the security and the government jumps into that bandwagon, it really sends a very disheartening situation going towards 2022, when we'll actually be electing the president. Remember, we've had these scenarios. And the moment the common mwananchi now totally loses faith that my vote doesn't count, then for sure we are headed for very dark days ahead. And I think the government and the security agencies should see this, because we are all living in this country. If total chaos breaks into this country, I don't think it will spare anybody. Not even if the person with a gun thinks that he's well protected, he should remember that he has a family which does not have a gun. He has relatives all over this country. You know, we are not Kakundi, that somebody in Kiambu is just in Kiambu and he's not in Kwale, or somebody in Kwale is just in Kwale and he's not in Ugenya. I think this is what should actually be our concern right now. For heaven's sake, let the different agencies play their roles as per their mandate through the constitution, the different acts of parliament. Let IBC, for now I think IBC has done its best, because it is only the interference. But I am stressing this going forward. Can the government respect the will of the people?
Okay, we wait.
Arinda, allow me to salute the head of the EIBC for personally seeing it important to walk to Juja, to personally witness what is going on there. Because I think where his presence there, it means a lot. And to give the people of Juja some kind of confidence. And therefore, any result that may come out, they will just be able to accept the report.
Well, the biggest fear is then that they should not be quashed, because such scenarios can, you know, breed lots of chaos. So we will be having David Mudoka keep us up to the loop on what plays out there. Daisy, Linda Katiba says, we are political leaders, professionals, activists, and active citizens here to defend the 2010 Constitution, advance democracy, and rule of law. Without going much into what it is that, your reactions were after that ruling, because then we can almost guess, well, that landmark ruling and declaration by 5-bench judge in High Court that overturned or for a moment put a halt to the reggae tunes. Do you suppose then that this is actually the Constitution that has fought for itself and not these judges that now claim that powerful state officials are issuing direct threats to the bench?
Well, of course, as you said, we are very, very excited as Linda Katiba that the judges unanimously affirmed the supremacy of the Constitution. And that is the thing about this transformative Constitution, is that one, if it is followed and affirmed, it does defend itself from the machinations of people who would want to abuse positions of power granted through the different offices as set in the Constitution to seek to amend the Constitution for their own gains. Let us not forget the history of constitution making in Kenya. The history of constitution making in Kenya has been extremely controversial and scandalous. Leaders have used amendments to the Constitution to consolidate power to themselves, to escape accountability, and to entrench themselves deeply into those positions and giving the people no recourse. Now, the Constitution 2010 is a totally transformative document. It centers the people as the sovereign, and those people, in their exercise of their sovereign power, are given the right to exercise it either directly or through delegated authority. So everyone, whether executive, the presidency, and the people sitting in the executive, members of parliament, and the judiciary, they exercise donated power that belongs to the people. The ruling affirmed this. And they basically said, if you want to make amendments to the Constitution, you cannot do it without going to the people. And what I love is that they actually gave us the history of how we attained the 2010 Constitution. It was a lengthy process, but it was extremely people-centered. And so when you go to the heart of the matter, the foundational principles that underpin the 2010 Constitution, you cannot seek to make amendments without going to the people, fundamental amendments without going to the people. And so for me, it is a win for the Constitution 2010 and a win for the sovereign people of Kenya. And the people, by the way, are happy. Let not people try to deceive us. Very many Kenyans, majority of Kenyans, are relieved and excited that the judges were bold enough to affirm their sovereignty and the Constitution, and to make declarations that basically restored that faith. And I think the judges should be commended, because it takes boldness and courage on the part of the judges to make that judgment in the face of an executive that is extremely vindictive and has been fighting the judiciary, Right. So for me, those are real patriots, and we salute them and we thank them, for what they have done.
All right.
And okay.
All right. Allow me to loop in Mheshimiwa from Matugo before I come to you. Briefly, Honorable Honorable Kasim Tandaza. It is interesting to note that, the argument on ground is that, yes, Wanjiku was excited about the ruling, based on the fact that we probably have not seen any of them going out there to challenge this particular ruling, which is now open for anyone to go and challenge. But before we even come to that excitement, it's been a ruling that has excited many, has been, probably considered to be a good ruling, but equally an indictment to, the people who represent the people. Indictment to the proponents, to the instigators of this particular process. Parliament is one that we look at keenly. Because within Parliament, we had members who argued that there is a problem with this document, how it has been initiated, the constitutionalism aspect of it, but they still proceeded to vote yes. They still proceeded to endorse this document. Where does it leave the common mwananchi when we can hear the judges equally pronouncing that, well, the executive has gone against the constitution in even instigating this particular process that is not well constituted?
Thank you. I'm one leader who really advocates for the independence of the judiciary, that they should be able to determine matters they deem fit within their ambit and what they think is the rule of law. But I'm surprised when Amdani actually comes here and says that the people who are not involved, that the bench went ahead and said should be people driven. I believe she lives in Kenya. Was she not around when the people actually gave their views to this particular amendment? She could have refused to participate herself, or some people could have refused to give their input into this document. But when it comes to the common mwananchi, surely there were meetings all over this country where views were collected. And for sure, for anything to go forward, somebody has to take a lead. People cannot just come on their own and collect views and present them to who. So an environment was created by a Kenyan. Remember, this was not a foreign person, by a Kenyan, to collect these views. It went through validation, and it went again back to the people through their representatives as the constitution stipulates in the counties. The majority voted yes. It went again to the National Assembly and to the Senate, and the majority voted yes. For the view who voted no, it is also their right. But this being a democratic country, and I think Dan is one of the few people who really advocates for democracy, we know that the majority will always have their way. The minority will have their say. So, for sure, we need to move forward with this document. We know even when we passed this Katiba, the ones who are saying Linda Katiba, the 2010 one, it was unanimous that we are passing it, but certainly 80% is good, 20% is bad. At what point are we going to correct the 20%? When Amdani says that people are celebrating down here, I think a few are celebrating, because for us, we've been waiting for more money to the grassroots. The more money going to the counties actually goes down to the common mwananchi. When more money remains at the national level, certainly that's not where the common person is. It basically remains with the leaders. So this talk that the common mwananchi is celebrating because of halting BBI, celebrating because more money now will not go to them, celebrating because we are not sure how we are going to handle our 2022 general election, given our past of chaos, given our past of civil strife, and we are trying to, and now somebody says now the Kenyan mwananchi is celebrating. Surely, celebrating for what? I think I agree with the court's pronouncement. I cannot fault it. But remember, they basically talked about the process, not about the content of the BBI. It is the process which was faulted. And when it comes to the process, that is not the common mwananchi's problem, But the common mwananchi, I believe, up to now is waiting for more resources. He is hoping.
But as a representative of the common mwananchi,
the next general election will be handled differently, and we will vote and go home peacefully, and the common mwananchi continues with her or with his own business down there.
Don't you think you failed the common mwananchi in supporting this document, while it could appear as though it should be basic knowledge for legislators, basic knowledge for the people who are the top of the helm to understand what it is that the Constitution dictates, and therefore acknowledge that there is a problem with the process in as much as the content is good, and pinpoint that?
Well, if you come to me, I will tell you I really don't see any major problem, because if the issue, one of the issues are the two proponents, that the executive, that is the president, cannot start a popular initiative. To me, that should not hold water, because what a popular initiative means is that it should end with a referendum. The person, the common mwananchi is the final decider. Whether the document is good or bad, it ends with the referendum. And that is where we were headed for. So we were to wait for the general population to decide yes or no. It was not the president. It is not the parliamentarians where this document is ending. To me, that is where it is. Remember,
Honorable Kasim.
One of them is not even the president. Raila Amolo Odinga, basically now, is a common mwananchi. So if next time we say even Amdani cannot start a process because she's executive director with Linda Katiba, I think then we need further definition of what an ordinary person is.
Even if this was not quashed. Even if this was not quashed, and make this brief, probably 20 seconds, are you confident that the people of Matuga really understand the content within the BBI, and therefore if it had to go to the level of the referendum, if we were holding a referendum tomorrow, then they'll be knowing what they're voting for or against?
Very well, very well. I've told them that with the BBI document, we are getting more funds to the counties from 15 to 35%. They have seen the benefits of devolution for the last 8 years. Amdani, believe it or not, for the last 50 years, we've not had an ICU bed in Kwale County. Courtesy of the county government, we have 2 ICU beds. I know this surprises you. You think everybody in this Kenya has all the tarmac roads that they need. They have all the health facilities that they need. Some of us are really celebrating this devolution thing, and which has been there for only 8 years. In Matuga, in Kwale County, we are getting 3 new constituencies. Certainly, that means more CDF money. In fact, in the same Katiba, this amendment, CDF now is being anchored in the Constitution. I know Amdani does not need CDF. She can afford to pay school fees for her kids and her relatives.
We'll allow her to respond to that.
Down there, who is actually depending on CDF. When CDF is threatened, and then you say they are celebrating because no CDF, because especially when CDF, basically it is not suspended. The whole concept of the common mwananchi. Some people in actually don't know who the common mwananchi is.
Let's not keep Honorable Gakuya in the cold so much. Abdani, I'll come to you so that you can respond. But first, Honorable Gakuya, on this matter, do you suppose that President Uhuru Kenyatta has not been faithful to the sovereignty of the Constitution based on that ruling and trickling this down to the level of you as parliamentarians?
Oh, thank you.
And actually, some bit of, court or the arms of the court somehow, because then at some point in time that their cases were presented to them and they probably went contrary to what it is that the petitioners had fronted.
Thank you, Rita. One, what the citizens of this country need to understand is how the constitution order stipulates each and everyone's work or duty. And it's very stipulated in the new constitution order. The powers of the president and his duties are very stipulated. And therefore, the big elephant in the house here is the interpretation of those 2 articles. Article 256 and Article 257. And that is what this bench pronounced themselves to. Because at the point that they arrived to blame the head of state in a manner that he conducted this particular proposal is that it was contrary to the laid down procedures by the Constitution. And that is why they are blaming that particular process. Because the interpretation is that he operated through invoking Article 257, which now gives what we call popular vote. And therefore, that is what they are challenging. And they are very clear that there is now an option of 256, where if the president could have wished this matter to propel through that other route of parliament, he could have initiated through parliament process. That is relevant. And I am telling you for sure, we would wish to wait to hear from the other bench of now the appeal court what they will tell us, because we would wish to hear from them whether they will contravene the explanation made or interpretation made by this bench that under that particular 2 articles and how to separate them, and whether the president had the mandate to propel or commence a process using that particular route of Article 257. That is squarely where the matter lies. The other thing that actually was challenged in this particular case is the manner in which what I can call civic education was conducted. Because you realize that, in fact, every single voter in this country is eligible to exercise his rights. Therefore, any particular object or any particular concept you want to sell to him or her, you must enable her to understand what a concept you are selling. In this particular case, when the BBI was published, it was only published in one language, which is English. And it was posted to what I can say, the soft material. And it's only those who are eligible, those who are eligible to read, which can read and understand, who can be able to benefit out of that the soft material. But the question was here that we have our mothers who never went to school, who actually want this particular document to be written on a language that they can understand. It was never done, and therefore that's the issue. One of the petitioners was arguing, yes, English cannot reach every single citizen of Kenya. And therefore, there was need to publish a set of English, a set of Kiswahili, and any other language that can reach the people. But here, you are being tied with only one single language of English, which cannot be able to fulfill every other citizen to read and understand.
Do you suppose then the document carries, great things for the common mwananchi, and therefore, so if this was translated into all these languages, then you do need
In short, let me tell you, Linda, the substance of this particular document, one thing where personally I have been pinpointing is that we are not considering the economic status of this country when we are preparing this document. It is time wrong to me. It is time wrong because the country is heading elsewhere and we are trying to prepare other things in the middle.
But just when will time be right, Mheshimiwa?
Yeah, I can tell you, Linda, understand me. We have a scenario where the world is fighting with COVID, like India. Do you want to tell India that they will give priority to amendment of constitution, or they will just take priority to their people?
But again, they will not halt everything that the government is supposed to run.
No, let us agree.
Okay.
Do we have enough for COVID? Do we have enough? We are still begging from donors. We are begging from everywhere. In this only financial year, when this country require to have made enough budget to fight with this pandemic, we have only put in our budget 36 billion. Only. When we are begging billions and billions of money from donors, why can't we first seek from our own domestic and put enough money to fight with this particular phenomenon? But we are not giving us a priority, but we are preparing another document here because in our mind and inside our mind, we have what we call a feature, or what I can call a motive that is not known to everybody. Because here, people somewhere are driving what we call a succession vehicle. And that they are pushing this country because their minds are not in the COVID, are not in any other priority for now, but their mind is how to colonize Kenya after the 5 years. Okay. And therefore, the vessel here is to make sure that either way the BBI has to go through, whether we are going to bribe the MCAs with what we call grants or not, but the vehicle has to see its rights of the day. But happy to the judiciary that they have come to say it can stop reggae.
Right.
And yes, that's how the weather is. Let us see whether reggae will still move forward. Okay. And I have no problem with the propellers. But they should give Kenyans the priority they deserve for now. Okay. The priority for now is not BBI. We have people sleeping hungry.
All right. I mean, even during the promulgation of the 2010 Constitution, we still had people sleeping hungry. And therefore, I agree. Let's take a short break, Mheshimiwa. Let's take a short break. Daisy, we'll loop you after.
Raukia siku njema na tunukiwa offers kila siku. Pata offers zote mahali pamoja ili uongee zaidi, utume SMS zaidi na ubrowse zaidi.
Wewe usijali. Tuma namba ya kila supplier kwa hiyo soko. Ndio nitaongea na kila mmoja wao.
Very good. Piga *444 utunukiwe Credo double.
Raukia siku njema na tunukiwa offers kila siku.
Oh, hi. It's not what you're thinking. It's a cup of coffee. Coffee, movie. Together, coffee with movie. Every Sunday, 8 p.m. on TV 47, where we bring you interesting, enticing people. Well, we've concentrated on musicians.
Yeah.
Producers.
So now I manage, because talent management and events management, I think, was my passion.
Right about now, we want to go beyond to the counties and to other countries. I'll see you. Let the sun stand still like Joshua time for 3 hours, but this time for only 1 hour. We bring you coffee with movie. Interesting, enticing guests. I'll see you. Tunaanza tuna Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, twende Uganda, Magufuli Land, TZ, you never know. It is coffee with movie. Jua unaweza enda sasa.
Okay.
Before the markets open, farmers begin their day, each with the desire to produce the best. But how can they increase the numbers, maintain the standards,
Aitoi ile garlic inafaa itoi, that standard garlic.
reduce the cost,
we spread our risk,
and yet remain the best? Kilimo Diaries, every Sunday when the clock hits 7:30 p.m. The story continues to unfold. Home of Untold Stories.
Well, it's heated up in here, and so we loop you in. Welcome back. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela TV47K. We value your feedback. Kindly drop in the comments so that we can get to sample them as we proceed with the broadcast. Still with me, Daisy Amdani, member of the Linda Katiba Initiative, and we also have Honorable Member of Parliament of Matuga, that is Honorable Kasim Sawa Tendaza, and the Member of Parliament of Embakasi North, Honorable James Gakuya, who's with us this morning. Daisy, to you, as you react to what it is that Kasim raises, we acknowledge that there's so much that is incorporated in this particular document, but it is interesting to note that a majority of these members of parliament are pushing for this initiative, and they sell this agenda of, you know what, we are going to get more monies or more money to the people. Is that just it? Don't we require to know what this document has, more, to make sure that even as you go out there to vote, then you know what it is that you're voting for? Because technically that can be used to hoodwink citizens, as Mushimiwa would say. They probably do not understand how to read these things, and therefore they depend hugely on the individuals who are able to read to explain things. And therefore, if you just go there with this one card of, you know what, we're getting more monies to the county, does it serve them right?
And I think, Linda, you raise a fundamental issue. You know what the judges did not say anything about the content of the BBI bill. What they have talked about is process. And you know that the Constitution allows for its amendment, but it also provides the avenues through which it can be amended. What they have said is the popular initiative route is not available to the president. Okay?
Yeah.
The popular initiative is reserved for the people, the popular, the sovereign. That is the route. Now, remember...
But this is the argument. Is the president not a citizen before he is the president? If at all, you can get to levels, and I mean, language is one thing that was looked at, to a level of calling him Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, is as polite as saying that you also acknowledge that he is a citizen in the first place.
Okay, let me start by saying, we have two members of parliament here. We have a member of parliament for Matuga, Mr. Kasim, and we have member for
Embakasi North.
Embakasi North, Mr. Gakuya. They are citizens of Kenya. That they are. However, they hold a position of privilege because the people, in exercising their sovereign will, donated to them power to represent them. Once they have been affirmed as the people's representatives, they ascend to a position of privilege and power that is not available to other citizens. Those powers and privileges are accorded to them so that they are able to administer the state and its resources on behalf of the people. That is the same thing that applies with Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta. Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, while being a citizen, occupies the office of the president and exercises powers and privileges that belong to the office of the presidency. And those powers allow him to use certain processes. He can amend the constitution. Now, while the parliamentary initiative is not open to him, he has an attorney general through whom he can delegate the issues that need to be framed for a constitutional amendment, have them put in a bill, and then taken to parliament for debate. That is the route that he has available to him. Popular initiative is reserved now for you and me, Linda. Now, we are the ordinary citizens, right? And that is why the threshold is much lower. 1 million signatures. For government to get 1 million signatures, that's a walk in the park. And we saw how they did it. They used the provincial administration. You cannot use public resources for popular initiative. They used the provincial administration. The people were signing. Yes, we are not disputing that there were signatures. We saw it as Linda Katiba. We were observers to the verification exercise. There was not a single bill attached to any of those signatures. So it is doubtful that the people even knew what they were signing on. And so basically what the courts have said, the president cannot be Mr. President and at the same time be citizen number one, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta. He needs to choose. And the Constitution has said, if you sit in the place of the presidency, you cannot use popular initiative. Even members of parliament, they have parliamentary route. They have the powers to amend the Constitution because they have the right to legislate and to make law. So that is what has been affirmed. And let me tell you something. That ruling was an indictment on parliament and an indictment on the president himself. It has shown that they have abused their powers and privileges to come with a process that is a mongrel, that is foreign to the Constitution. Be that as it may, there are issues in the BBI that can be salvaged through the parliamentary process. Okay? There are issues, there's many outstanding issues that need to be resolved, that can be resolved through policy, through legislation, and even through parliamentary amendments. However, there are issues that absolutely are referendum issues, things like the separation of powers, members of parliament, becoming members of the executive, the office of the ombudsman, where they are appointed by the president, vetted by parliament, and can initiate investigations on judges on their own accord. So there are many, many issues. So those are referendum issues. Those go to issues of basic doctrine, okay? And for that, the process that they have followed is not going to work. Right. So Honorable Kasim talks about the 80% that was good and the 20% that was bad. Yet the BBI didn't flag out those issues in terms of saying that this is the 80% that was bad. Many of the things that we're talking about, electoral processes, addressing the issue of violence, none of that is actually addressed in the BBI. The judges have also said you cannot bring an omnibus of totally unrelated issues because the BBI is seeking to make amendments to 14 chapters of our Constitution that has only 18 chapters. So that's not an amendment, that's an overhaul. And they're saying you can't give people this omnibus without allowing them to pick and choose, because I may be willing to support the 2/3 gender principle, but I'm not. The task force cannot usurp the role of the IBC and decide to allocate constituencies in a manner that is not well understood. That is purely the role of the IEBC. So while we are not saying that Kwale does not need additional constituencies, or the ones that have been allocated are not supposed to be allocated, but there is a method, and we have a commission that has the responsibility of doing that. Members of Parliament know that IBC, as far back as 2018, submitted a budget and a plan to Parliament for funding to allow for the delimitation of boundaries and for preparations for the electoral process. To date, they've never given IBC their budget. So they too have hampered the delimitation of boundaries by their delays. So the task force cannot now come and say, oh, we've given constituencies. And of course, members of Parliament know that it brings additional benefits to the people when you give new constituencies. And so they want to support because of that. If we then build a culture where we break the law to get good things, then tomorrow somebody will break the law to get bad things. And how will we stop them, and how will we justify it? Members of Parliament must follow the rule of law, and the president must follow the rule of law. And so they are indicted. In fact, Linda, I say, if Kenya was a functioning democracy, by now the Attorney General should have resigned, and members of Parliament should be working on an impeachment of the president if Kenya was a functioning democracy. Because what that ruling did really was to indict the president and the Attorney General and members of Parliament. And you know, the members of Parliament are facing dissolution. We have a case against you people on the 2/3 honorable members, and we are pushing for the dissolution of Parliament. So there are many fundamental issues that need to be covered under you know, even as we understand this. And I think it's doubtful that the Supreme Court, or rather the Court of Appeal, will overturn the entire judgment. If one matter is upheld, BBI is dead.
All right, I'd come back to you later on to know whether there are some reservations, or maybe they are parts of the rulings that you do not agree to. But first, let's loop in Honorable Kasim. Yes, Honorable Kasim. I'm really mesmerized or surprised by the way Linda double speaks. Here she is talking about Linda or Daisy.
No, I'm Danny. Sorry,
yes.
I'm Danny. You know, I'm really, somehow I really got worked up. I'm Danny. Why double speak? Here you are saying that Parliament stands dissolved because of the 2/3 gender rule, which is true through the court, through the former CJ. We are there courtesy of the president's benevolence, let me put it that way. But then when we come with the BBI to cure the 2/3 gender rule, you say you don't need it. Surely. Which solution do you have? Or you just don't want this country to have a parliament and you only have Linda Katiba and there you are. Because it is only in the BBI which proposes a solution to the 2/3 gender rule, which it seems is very sacred to you. Here you are talking about that the process was not followed, the president should be impeached because of the pronouncement of the court, and yet you are still saying Kenya should be a functioning democracy. If the president is impeached right now, if Parliament stands dissolved because of the 2/3 gender rule, where you don't want the solution, you don't want that one sorted out, why do you talk about a democracy, a functioning democracy? How that the democracy?
Can I respond?
So it reaches a point where we need to think outside the box. Yes, the processes might not have been followed, but what is the way forward to salvage this situation? For sure, and we will agree with me, come 2022, if we don't change the way we've been having our elections, we've been conducting our elections and having the results in the current situation, I don't want to say that I'm a prophet of doom, but given our history since the multi-party democracy, surely we needed a break. And that only can be found through the BBI and through a referendum.
30 seconds only to respond. 30 seconds.
Parliament, yes, I agree with you. But if the basic structure, one of the main issues of the BBI is for peaceful presidential election, which will be devoid of chaos in this country. You agree with me, the positions proposed there can only go through a referendum, not through Parliament. And to me, if there's anything that worries me most, it's not about the extra fund that goes to the counties. It's not about the CDF being anchored in the Constitution, but peace. What is the price of chaos? What is the price of losing lives in this country.
But BBI has no solution to chaos.
Well, Honorable Kasim,
what has brought us where we are right now? It is the chaos that at one time we do so well. During the general election, the economy goes to zero.
How confident are you that this is going to address that, Honorable Kasim? Because on this other side,
yes.
On this other side, Honorable Gakuya will tell you that he's not confident that BBI is going to address that, and make it brief so that we can have.
I am telling you, the drafters of BBI and their intention. Kasim, just give me a break. Just give me a break.
Let's have order, gentlemen.
Result to me for change, and then see if it doesn't work, we'll change it again. But can we change? Because whatever we have already, we've seen that it's not working.
We probably he's trying to say that we cannot be doing the same thing and expect different results. It's important.
But for sure, let me tell you, leader, we shall only achieve our goal for chaos after election if we manage our election processes well. That's where the bottom line starts. Because for sure, if you fail to have a peaceful, fair, and a free election, how do you expect to have no chaos after such an election? Therefore, the ball lies with AIBC to provide Kenyans with a free, fair election. When we get that, we have achieved our mandate. Let me tell you, today we are propagating that actually inclusivity is there in the BBI. There is no anything like inclusivity. In the element of expanded executive, let me tell you, the authors of this particular draft, they have not shown any Kenyans anyhow they can bring that inclusivity. Where is it coming? The proposal is the Prime Minister will be elected by the President from the majority party in the House. What about if the majority party is a grand coalition that will present the head of state?
Okay.
Would they care to take somebody from a lesser party to that position? How will the lesser parties become part of the government? How will inclusive they come in? If a grand coalition will take over everything, that it tells you the strategies. Like now, the current government is under two pillars: the deputy president, who is William Ruto, and the head of state, and some other stakeholders. Assume,
but he's been saying that the deputy president is not there.
Assume the head of state carries the day. Where will Laila and the rest of the team come in that government? Because surely, if we have numbers in the House, we shall get the Prime Minister straight away. Because we have the numbers.
Yes.
If we have already,
what do you mean?
So in that particular case, I'm telling you, inclusivity is not there.
Okay.
Because other parties will still.
By we, you mean Mount Kenya or Jubilee Party?
No, I am talking of
Jubilee Party.
For example.
All right.
Yes, I'm just take it as an example.
All right.
Currently, we have NASA, which could not get any single foot in the House or anywhere because it was not part of the coalition that in the governing.
All right.
And this has not changed because the Prime Minister will not be coming from a lesser party. He will be coming from the majority party. What about if that majority party is the one which has brought the president?
All right, Daisy, as you respond, it's also important that we acknowledge that there are a couple of things that could be of importance. For instance, what they propose on the 2/3 gender rule, well, the implementation is what is the question at hand. But don't you think that there are a couple of things that are within this particular document that maybe Kenya should have taken and, sat on them and say that at least out of this, we're going to get progress? And within this ruling, do you suppose that there's some issues that you probably do not agree with in that particular ruling?
First of all, let me say this. The reason why we don't have the 2/3 gender rule is because Parliament and the executive have exercised veto power over the rights of women in this country. The Constitution requires that Parliament should have put in place the necessary legislation, and the only reason they are facing dissolution is because they have failed to do that. We have clauses in the Constitution that have not yet been fully implemented, and those go to the heart of inclusivity. That is the 2/3 gender rule. That is Article 81B, Article 81C with regards to disability, and Article 100. These three have never been implemented, and not because people have not tried. We have brought severally proposals. We have worked together with members of Parliament, together with the National Gender and Equality Commission, and brought proposals to Parliament which have been roundly rejected.
Right.
So they should not make it look like it is a favor that is being done. The formula for the implementation of the 2/3 gender rule contained in the BBI actually takes away from the women seats that are already there. They remove the 47 seats from the National Assembly, move them to the Senate. They put in a sunset clause for the top-up seats in the National Assembly and the one in the county assemblies, which, by the way, has been working for women. They put a sunset clause, 10 years in the county assemblies, 15 years in the National Assembly, so that within a total of 15 years, there will be no mechanism to implement the 2/3 and we will be back to square one. So that does not answer the problem. They have not also brought in amendments for the Elections Act and all that, because a lot of what needs to be done around the 2/3 can be done through the political parties, but the political parties have remained adamant they are not doing it. Okay. Now, there are issues in the BBI, and I've said it before, that can be addressed through a parliamentary process and policy actions, okay? But the proposals that they are making are seeking to fundamentally alter the constitutional framework of this country. And one of the things that it seeks to do is to cause the leadership, the duty bearers, to escape accountability. When that is what Kenyans expressly said that they did not want. So I think for me, it is a conversation that we should have. The ruling was a very rich judgment, and I think that Kenyans need to unpack it. And in fact, that is one of the things that we intend to do as Linda Katiba. Right. We intend to unpack this ruling and disseminate it to Kenyans, because what it has done, it has centered the people as the sovereign and the duty bearers as those who are supposed to serve the people. So as I said before, and I'm going to say it again, and I think that members of parliament need to sober up and understand what is happening. Kenya has changed. Parliament is not sovereign. The president is not sovereign. They are there to serve the people. They cannot choose to do their own thing. They cannot try to call a process which is not a popular initiative. Even look at the petitioners in court. It is the Attorney General who has gone to challenge the High Court ruling. Are you going to tell me now that he is also Mr. Kehara Kariuki, so that now we look at him as also citizen? He's the Attorney General of the Republic. The BBI process has violated the Constitution and the rule of law. And it must not be allowed to continue, because if it does, it will have entrenched a very, very erroneous method of amending our constitution. And we need to congratulate our committee of experts for having the foresight and putting in place those clauses, the protected clauses, that give us the legal right to challenge every circumvention of that process. And for me, I celebrate our judges, and I say Parliament now should move on and address themselves to the pressing issues. BBI should be retired, and let us now look at the serious issues facing the country. You're talking about money to the constituencies. You members of parliament know you have not even received your CDF in full. You know that the country cannot even afford its wage bill. We have a deficit of over 1.5 trillion in our budget.
Let's allow them to respond to.
No, so I'm saying that they must address themselves to the pressing issues. They cannot continue to take us down a pathway that is not addressing the pertinent issues of this country. Kenya is in an economic crisis and is facing economic collapse. Kenya is in a debt crisis. Kenya is in a health crisis. Our members of parliament should be there addressing that issue. The courts have given them a lifeline. If they were being railroaded by the executive, the same way we saw the county as being railroaded, they now have reprieve. Now address yourselves to the issues around the problems facing Kenyans and forget about it.
Fair enough. Let's allow them to also respond. And even as we look at this, Honorable Kasim, we do not overlook the aspect of this conversation that has cut across Africa on the aspect of regime change. Our biggest fears are that we witness tendencies of regime changes actively actively being involved in the politics of the day in the country as has been across other countries. You look at their pyramid, you speak of how they capture the judiciary, how they capture, or they take advantage of the civil society groups to run the activities in the nation, how they get into the media fraternities, how they get into parliament and all that. Are we, or should we be a worried lot? Do you foresee a scenario where there's going to be a lot of coups around, including that one of, what has been looked at as activism from the level of the judiciary?
Linda, we've come a long way, and thank God also for where we've reached. We've come a long way, that to the extent that for the first time in the African continent, the judiciary was able to annul a whole presidential election, and it was quiet. Okay, save for the normal unnecessary noise I keep on referring to. We went into a repeat election and life moved on. So we've come a long way. We've come a long way to that extent where now a bench can actually annul a whole, give a verdict against a whole popular initiative where the common mwananchi has been involved. I am of the opinion that the referendum, that is where the voice of the common mwananchi is. If by the time the referendum comes and the mwananchi doesn't know what he or she is voting about, then she votes no, or he votes no, and it ends there.
Okay.
There is, in the current constitution, the moment the referendum is over, it is over. There is no recourse after that. And that is where the voice of the mwananchi will be heard. If the promoters will not have done enough to enlighten the mwananchi, then it's obvious it's going to fail. And that's what we should be looking at. But for now, for sure, I know we have pressing problems. I know we are trying the best to address them. We know that, but to me, the biggest problem and the biggest threat to this country is the violence after every 5 elections.
All
My
right.
colleague there
As we close,
talked about the normal, that the handling of the election should be done. But remember, our country is highly tribalistic. Let's appreciate this. I'm Danny. I have not asked your tribe, and you've not asked my tribe, but we know Kenyans are very tribalistic. We vote along tribal lines, unlike even our neighbors here in Tanzania, for sure. So we have unique circumstances, which for sure they need unique solutions.
Okay.
Not just the ordinary solution. Once you have the judiciary, once you have the IBC and it conducts its election properly, then there will be no chaos.
Fair enough.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's be alive to the fact that we are tribalistic. It's not a good thing.
Yes.
I don't like it myself, but for now, that is the reality. We need to find a solution on how to solve our voting based on tribal lines. And the BBI, to me, I conclude, was having a glimpse of hope that probably this time, since the loser will get an office, whichever tribe he comes from, then
we have to conclude.
The problem has been.
We have to close. Thank you. As you close it, in 1 minute maximum.
Oh, thank you. Rida, I just want to close by saying we are not challenging that, in fact, we are not needed to do any amendment within our constitutional order. But I think also it's important to consider timing of this particular issue. The issue to do currently is our shamble economics. And I think that if we can prioritize on how we are going to rebuild back our economy, bring back our SME team back to work, back to business, I think those are the pertinent issues for now, because we have a big damage out of this COVID pandemic. But if we are pushing this matter as if it is life and death, it's like Kenya is migrating. Kenya is not moving anywhere. Let us deal with the priorities first.
Okay, thank you so much, Honorable Member of Parliament of Embakasi North, James Gakuya. It was good having you. Daisy Amdani, and member of Linda Katiba Initiative. And lastly, Honorable Member of Parliament of Matuga, Honorable Kasim Tandaza Sawa. It was good having you. I know there's still much that would have touched on, but all the same, we keep it or we preserve that for next time. We close it at that and we cross over to a different conversation altogether on matters, marriage and money. You don't want to miss that.